Moving on now to the big story of the hour, actually, a story that came out last evening. More disclosures from IndusInd Bank that raise more questions. The bank has spoken about two specific accounting issues now, in addition to what was, in early April, the derivative discrepancy. We have Abizer Diwanji, founder at NeoStrat Advisors, joining in. Abizer, good morning. Thanks for joining in. So, for the benefit of our viewers, I'm just recapping what are these two new issues at IndusInd Bank. One is that the internal accounts department, let's put up the graphics as well if we can, so viewers are aware of specifically what we're talking about. There is a 674 crore rupee entry which was incorrectly recorded as interest over 3 quarters. The bank has said all of this will be reversed in the 4th quarter. And remember, IndusInd Bank has not declared numbers just yet. So the 674, they're saying they've reversed it in January. So net, no P&L impact. That's number one. The second issue that the bank disclosed yesterday was that there was a whistleblower complaint. And on behalf of that complaint, again, the internal accounts department went into check transactions recorded in other assets and liabilities. Now, they're saying that there were unsubstantiated balances aggregating to 595 crores in other assets account of the bank, and these were offset against corresponding balances appearing in other liabilities. Let's ask Abizer what all of this means. Abizer, I think the market's view is clear, and IndusInd Bank is a big underperformer this week.
Yep.
The Bank Nifty are up 3-4%. IndusInd is down 6-7%. So the market's view is very clear that there are way too many mistakes happening, and mistakes that are involving large amounts. Let's take the second part first. What does this mean? Unsubstantiated balances aggregating to 594 crores in other assets, but they've been now offset against other liabilities. And they've not clarified whether this means a P&L hit or not. Can you help us understand this?
Yeah. So, in banks' balance sheets, sometimes they have unreconciled suspense accounts. They have normal suspense accounts where entries bounce in and out. Like the derivatives transaction, for example, was also sitting in other assets and other liabilities. So what happens is that sometimes the way the accounting works is that an entry is made in income, for example, bounced off the other asset and then bounces out back when it gets reversed out, when the interest is collected or whatever. And that's how the other assets, other liabilities pan out in a bank. Now, it's important to note that even suspense accounts, which is accounts where unreconciled or unexplained balances also sit in other assets and other liabilities. So technically, unless one goes to the root cause of what these other assets and other liabilities were, which I'm sure IndusInd has done but not disclosed, at least to the in publicly declared forums, then one would not get an appreciation of exactly what was this. Having set off could have been the right option. But one needs to explain what these entries were, what the root causes of these unreconciled numbers or unsubstantiated numbers were, and how have now they been substantiated by netting off the other assets and other liabilities. Needs to be explained.
Okay, so you're saying that it's not something that is unheard of. It is done, but we don't know the rationale or the reason, and maybe we'll have more ideas. Now let's talk about the one that's causing the P&L hit. This 675 crores. I mean, how do you incorrectly recognize an amount as interest income for 3 quarters, and now that you're reversing the entire amount? What's going on here?
Incorrect is a harsh word, especially for the auditors as well as the internal auditors. Because we normally, don't certify balance sheets as correct or incorrect. So incorrect is a bad word to use, in my opinion. However, what would have happened here is that normally interest income in banks is computed through the system. And many things could have happened, and there's only a guess here because, again, there is no explanation. Is that, normally interest income is calculated by the system basis the loan and the input data. It could have been one that the input data was incorrectly entered in and hence the interest income was recognized. Could also have been that an NPA account, especially in MFIs, may not have been tagged as an NPA and the interest income would have continued to have accrued. These things are possible. But unless there is an explanation as to how this income was recorded, it's obviously not an accounting entry that's manually passed, in my opinion. Okay. These are systemic entries. But the root cause, the Surabhi of everything is that why don't we disclose comprehensively what the problem is? You're dealing with a bank which has lost confidence because of the derivatives issue. Thereafter, successively issues are coming out. And the issues are coming out as in they're dripping out of the balance sheets. And when they're getting dripped out, also we get reasons like incorrectly recorded or offsetted unsubstantiated balances. I think there needs to be a far more clear and explanation of the root cause and the remedial measure done, so that people know that these things are not systemic. Otherwise, by default, people would think that there are many more things that can come out of this balance sheet.
Abizer, hi, morning, Prashant here. What happens to existing auditors? You think we will see more heads rolling?
Well, the auditors will have to do a lot of explanation here clearly as to how they established what they call internal controls on financial reporting. There's a norm in auditing called internal controls on financial reporting. It basically means what are the controls to make sure that the numbers are substantially true and fair. So they will obviously have to explain whether there were glitches in there, whether those controls had failed, and if so, why did they not detect it? I think that, but they are the last line of defense. There is internal audit, there is the company's accounting itself. So I think there are many lines of defense that need to explain this.
Abizer, now let me ask you slightly, markets are always hopeful creatures, right? They're already looking at where the stock is and saying, well, it trades at 0.7 times price to book. The book, though, is a little, we're not very sure about what the book is, but with what we have for now. Next, let's talk about next steps. I mean, I think they've hired an executive search committee to send, they're looking for a leader. Do you think that is essentially what markets will wait and watch? And I'm just looking at the stock reaction now. It's corrected a little bit this week, but markets are clearly focused ahead. What's your sense?
I'm no market expert, but I can tell you how turnarounds would possibly work.
Yeah.
And what will happen is that, yes, there will be a new CEO. There will be a period of stabilization where the CEO will take stock of everything because he really doesn't want dripping information to come in later on. So there'll be a taking stock situation. Then there will obviously be a remedial time where growth will take a back seat, but governance and regulation will take a front seat. And then I think a growth strategy will start. So I think we're looking at a 3 to 4 year turnaround period. Over which obviously growth will be the least important.
And it's possible that whoever comes in, I mean, if so required, you have one of those, I mean, famously SBI, I think when there was that big kitchen sink exercise, right? Many years ago. No, I'm not suggesting what needs to happen, but it's possible, right? I mean,
I think they will want to clean up, the balance sheet to make sure that the start is cleaner. I mean, we saw Yes Bank happen as a successful turnaround after so many years. So yes, something like that would happen.
3-4 years, Abizer. So
Yes,
then 3-4 years. So what started as a 1,900 crore rupee, and I remember we had a conversation when the original, derivative issue was disclosed. Now, obviously, Mr. Katpalia is on his way out. Do you expect more heads to roll? Do you expect the RBI to step in a clearer way in any measure? Because we thought that it's over and done with that derivative issue, but then they keep coming up with something new or the other.
Yeah, but I think there's a good structure being put in place at IndusInd Bank, to run this whole process. I don't think RBI will interfere too much in it. Should not, in my opinion. But what will work is that let this structure decide on a good, stable CEO and give it its time to recover.
Are these? How would you? Abhisit, finally, I mean, how would we don't hear of so many such issues with other banks? Why is this becoming a bit of a repeat phenomena with IndusInd? I mean, no one's alleging that there's some malified intention here, at least none of that till now. Why is this happening? We don't see this with other banks.
So I think, what's happened is generally if you look at mid-sized banks, they've all been through a level of crisis over time. And any crisis manifests more on them, on their balance sheets. Like the MFI crisis would have hit the mid-sized banks more, and they got impacted, in terms of valuations, in terms of perceptions. And when these kind of things happen, sometimes desperate times calls for desperate measures. So people take these measures over a period of time. And then in the quest to grow significantly other parts of the business which are doing well, to make sure that the parts which are not doing well are covered well, sometimes errors do happen. So I think it's part of running business, in my opinion. So I think the way to deal with it is, if there is adequately capitalized banks, we will have not much of an issue.
Okay. All right, Abizer, we'll leave it there on that note. Thank you very much for joining us and giving us perspective on these two fresh developments, the whistleblower complaint and the 675 crore rupee interest income accounting that needs to be reversed.